Great.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Julie Sauvé. I'm one of the implementation specialists at Harmony Academy, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator today. We're grateful to have you here, and we want you to know that we're hosting this unique workshop series to bring together thought leaders to share ways that belonging can support social, personal, and academic learning. These presentations are the opinions and content of our guests, speakers, and they might not necessarily be a direct representation of Harmony. You and all registrants will receive a copy of the recording to watch and share with your colleagues, so be on the lookout for that in your email. And we'll also, at the end, allow some time for questions from you. We love seeing your smiling faces on camera today, but if you prefer to have your camera off because this is being recorded, we understand. Now, without further ado, let's take a bit more of a look at see what this series is all about. So we're excited to continue our Pathway to Belonging workshop. And in case you missed our first two workshops, they'll be shared with you via email and will be available on our YouTube channel as well. The good news is that you're already signed up for the entire series, and you can use the same Zoom link that you used today to join us for our fourth session in December. At Harmony Academy, we know that belonging, relationships, and well-being, they can't be achieved in one classroom or one student at a time. We know that true lasting change happens when everyone in the system feels valued, seen, and connected, from students to families to educators to custodians to district leaders. And that's why we've launched this Belonging Together series now, to move belonging from an isolated initiative to a systemic transformation. We've brought together visionary system leaders who are embedding belonging into the very operations of schools and districts, making it not one more thing, but really the heartbeat of how learning communities thrive. Each of our thought leaders have partnered with Harmony Academy to drive this mission forward, and you'll have the opportunity to engage with them throughout the year. As you listen to the thought leaders today, we invite you to think about how one of these presenters may better support your work and your leadership as you work to deepen healthy relationships and belonging within your school and community. Today, we're presenting virtual workshop 3, which is titled Belonging in Action, Transforming School, Restoring Engagement. You will meet our amazing presenters in just a minute, but we'd first like to know a little bit from the audience who's here. So please take a moment in the chat to share your name, your role, and where you're joining us from today. Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Grace. Again, for those of you that just popped in, we're just doing a quick second to see who's in the room with us. So if you'd like to, go ahead and put your name, where you're coming from today, and your role if you'd like. Wonderful. Welcome, Christine. Wonderful. Good morning, Shauna. Good morning, Nikki. Ildiko, I apologize if I said your name incorrectly. Please let me know if I did. Robbie, welcome. Stephanie, Gayla, wonderful. We're so excited to have all of you with us today. Now, I know you really came to hear from our speakers, so I'm going to turn the time over to them shortly. But before we do that, we also want to hear from you to get your feel on a quick poll. So the question is, what is one thing you think school leaders can do today to strengthen belonging? And I know that all of these are very important, but just go ahead and put your top choice and we'll kind of see what everybody thinks. And it's really not surprising But as I'm looking at the poll responses, we're kind of split because all of these are really important parts of strengthening belonging. So it looks like actually it's almost split a third of each: model authentic connection, provide time and tools for relationship building, and listening deeply before making a final decision. Those are all the top three choices, but of course we still have celebrate diverse voices and contributions as coming in and fourth. So thank you so much for taking the time to do the poll. It's great for us to get a feel for what you're thinking and your priorities. But alas, now it's time for me to go ahead and share with you today's objectives. Today, we will be hearing from Brandon as well as Dr. Strayhorn will be leading the conversation. And you'll really see that today's objectives focus on three things. We're going to do a quick review of why belonging matters. We're going to talk about how to share, how to transform a culture of belonging in schools, and really focus on some practical tips for leaders that you can use to create these environments. We're thrilled to welcome you back, Dr. Terrell Strayhorn, back to leading our conversation today that we started with you last week and then continued yesterday as well. Dr. Strayhorn is president and CEO of Do Good Work Consulting Group. He currently serves as professor of education at psychology at Virginia Union University, where he's also associate provost and interim dean of the School of Education. So welcome back, Dr. Strayhorn.
Thank you, Julie. Very nice to meet you. Not meet you, see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. And then also, I'm very excited to also share with you that we're joined by Brandon Cardet-Hernandez. With over 20 years of experience in education and public policy, Brandon is a transformative leader dedicated to closing achievement and opportunity gaps. Brandon's career has spanned roles as a teacher, school principal, policy advisor, and nonprofit executive, consistently driving positive change. In his current role as president at Mrs. Wordsmith, Brandon is leading a pioneering approach to literacy education by merging science-backed learning methods with innovative video game technology. So welcome, Brandon. We're grateful to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you as well.
All right. And I'm going to turn the time over to you now, Dr. Strayhorn, to kind of remind us of where we've begun and get the conversation started with Brandon today.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie, and to everyone tuning in the live room and those who will watch later. Thank you for joining us for what promises to be a really exciting session talking about sense of belonging and its link to both student achievement and school performance, turning around schools. We'll keep the energy going. So if you don't mind dropping some comments in the chat, just showing appreciation to Harmony, to Amanda, to Julie, to that entire team for their hard work in putting together these sessions. And there it is. You can use your digital reactions as well. They work too. Okay, so before I get into conversation with Brandon, for those of you who have been here, this might be your second, could be your third session. We've been talking about it, that there's a link between sense of belonging and performance, both for schools and for students. And whether you're a teacher, a building leader, a district administrator, a higher ed professional, whatever you fill in the blank, we are all in the business of human development, educational development, student development, and thriving. And at the heart of this work is belonging. When we talk about transforming schools, especially those that are facing challenges, we really typically focus on like new curriculum, leadership models, staffing, evaluation kinds and accountability systems. And those really do matter unapologetically. We're going to talk about it today. But underneath every strategy is something far more fundamental: sense of belonging, the human need to belong. Talk about that as well. So what is sense of belonging? Sense of belonging at its core is a feeling that one is accepted, valued, and included. We talked about that in the opening session, that you matter to others and you're part of something bigger than yourself. It's a psychological need, but it has really biological, emotional, spiritual dimensions in terms of manifestation. And it's just like safety and esteem. It is as fundamental to our needs as air, water, and food. We see this in research across the education sector, K-12 and higher ed, that when students and teachers and staff feel like they belong, feel and experience psychological safety, guess what? Engagement rises, resilience strengthens, innovation through the roof. People ask questions, they dare to imagine and dream, and performance at the student and school level improves. Just to be clear, belonging isn't about fitting in or being the same. It's not just a feeling, although it is. It is because it's a feeling, it can't be fabricated, it can't be forced. We have to nurture it, we have to engender it. It's not about being the same, it's not about conformity, it's about authenticity. Creating spaces where people are able to show up as their full and authentic selves and still feel valued and connected. It's also not a one-time achievement. This is important to today's conversation. It's something we have to build and develop and grow and engender over time through our policies, our practices, our procedures, our reward structures. And we sustain it through our daily interactions, our climate, and our leadership. As we said on the screen, it's linked to mattering. Mattering is the belief that you play an important role and your contributions are seen and heard and valued. And turnaround schools where people may be weary from years of change or low morale, leaders have to intentionally communicate mattering by recognizing effort, celebrating growth and improvement, by showing care and empathy, laying the foundation for belonging. So now you ask, well, then whose responsibility is it? We talked about in the first session, teachers play an important role creating relationship with students through their, relationships with students by knowing their names, knowing their stories, identifying their strengths. In the second session, we really spent more time talking about not just teachers, but the role that staff play and peers in creating a space where we greet one another, we celebrate, we create inclusive teams where people can be a part and they're safe, psychologically safe to thrive, to experiment and ask questions. Today, we're going to talk about the role of leaders, particularly, especially turnaround leaders, in creating belonging by setting the tone, by setting up models, communicating belief in everyone's potential, and making sure that everyone's voice is heard. To help me in this conversation, I have with me my friend, my brother, my partner in purpose, Brandon Cardet-Hernandez. I'm going to invite Brandon to the stage. Brandon, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Well, you can tell I'm doing well. I'm excited. We look
Amen.
like twins.
I know. Look at us.
So, before we get into the conversation, I thought we might kick off this way. Tell the lovely folks who are tuned into the room and those who will watch later a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Mm, I'm gonna go fast because we got some like real practical stuff to talk about. But just to share, and you heard some of this before, I've spent my entire career in education. I was a special education teacher. That's at the core of what I do and who I think about and my like real commitment to education for both things, right? Like kids who are misidentified and kids who are appropriately identified and need those supports and really sort of building community around that. But I also have had this really incredible journey. I worked as the director of strategic initiatives during the Bloomberg administration for the Department of Education in New York City, doing school turnaround work, really leading some of that strategy around school improvement. I then went on to become a turnaround principal myself. It was time to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, and had a lot of
Yeah.
success with a really great team wrapped around me. And we'll talk a little bit about some of that work. Later went on to work for Mayor Bill de Blasio in New York City as his education advisor, launching universal pre-K and 3K, a major social emotional learning initiative, our largest in the city, bringing actually some of Harmony's resources to our elementary and middle schools across New York. And now, obviously, I get to bring it all together, thinking about solutions that I wanted in the classroom, on the ground, that create real academic momentum for kids. And I get to do that at Mrs. Wordsmith.
Love it. Thank you
Yeah.
for that quick overview of the journey. And if you want to know more about Brandon, certainly you've already put it in the chat. Check out his bio, go to the site. When we post the recording, you want to check that out as well. All right, so I want to get into it. When you first stepped into your role as a
Mm.
turnaround principal, turnaround leader, how did you assess sense of belonging among staff and students? What are the practical ways you sort of took a reading on how sense of belonging was operating in your school?
Yeah. Listen, I came in with a mental model already, and I will hold that, that schools that are truly struggling to drive academic achievement for kids are more often than not places where adults don't feel like they belong, therefore they can't facilitate belonging for young people, or where students don't belong. One or the other, typically a mix of both. And that had come from sort of years in the field. So I sort of knew that. I did a quick inventory of where I was, and I knew 6 principals in 5 years. There's a lot here. And then what started to happen for me sort of naturally is I came in with my 90-day plan, as every good turnaround principal does, that really required me to get to know the team. A series of interviews where I asked everyone the same exact questions. It was about academic outcomes. It was around community. It was around a safety to be yourself here. It was around programs that were winning and things that were failing, opportunities, as well as real problems of practice. And then through that, I gathered my own data, confirmation bias, but still gathered that data.
Love it. And so as you're having these conversations and checking in with folks about, you know, what's going on for you, your ability to show up authentically. And you said you came in sort of knowing that, look, there's work to do here. 6 principals, 5 years, not the typical kind of setup. What were some of those initial cues, if you
Mm,
remember, that started to signal and give you some insight about belonging and morale?
yeah. There was a lot sort of in the air. And so I'll give, and this is true for a lot of folks who do turnaround work. We're talking about schools in the bottom third of a system, right? And so the school that I'm actually going to share some stories about is a school in the Bronx, in the poorest congressional district in the country. We had a 50% graduation rate. When I arrived, we had a 3% student proficiency level. At that time, a lot of fights. Let's say a culture that was deeply connected, not just to violence, but I think also like behaving in a way that showed a lack of respect for the space that they were in. And so there was an initial data dive, which every good leader does, like looking at the results, what's happening in our incidence reports, what's happening in student achievement, what's my staff turnover, what's my staff satisfaction rate, really diving into that. And then starting to think about what's working. If you arrive at a turnaround school looking at it from a failure sort of mindset, you will only see the opportunities for growth. And those were so obvious. Those I discussed in the interview. We all could see that. Those were on the school report card and the dashboard. But the stuff that was really good was where I was much more curious about. What were these little opportunities where things were looking good? And so I found these things, moments of student leadership, right? Like clubs and certain activities, certain people, teachers who were really connecting, or adults in the building. Actually, one of them being a school safety agent who really became a driving force of much of the turnaround of the school. People in the building who were making meaningful relationships with kids, and kids were starting to come together. And from that sort of thinking, good stuff happening, programs that were working, adults that were winning, I did a pretty intense inventory with a small group of teachers, one from every grade level, where we took every single student in the building and we identified if they have a got you person or a know you person or no one. And so the got you person, when I think about that, is the person who's like, I got you. On the toughest day, I'm reaching out to you. Every educator in the room has had this kid where you're like, I got you. You come to me if something tough's going on at home, if you're having a problem with another teacher, if you broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Like it's really a meaningful adult relationships, the type of adult relationships that changes kids' lives. And then there's the know you person, and those are important. We need a mix of those. Every kid needs a mix of those in schools. Just like, I know you, we're good. You'll tell me some things, we connect. You make sure I get a high five. You give me updates. You're going to share your art project with me. I know you. And then we took the inventory of what kid truly, and we had to be honest. This was sober work. What kid had no one? And at the same time, what adults had no one? And both things can be true. And Terrell and I know each other in real life, and so we talk. But I believe schools work best when kids and adults are in parallel process. That you are not building systems where adults are doing one thing and kids are doing another thing. So you have to look at it at the same lens. What adults had a got you and a know you, and what kids had a got you and a know you, and where was that starting to coexist? That was the first real step I actually thought going deeper than the performance data to really understanding the culture of the school and going deeper than the city culture data, the surveys that told me I feel safe and all these things, going a little bit deeper to understand like who are the people and players in this building and how are we coexisting?
I love it. And you're exactly right. Brandon and I know each other in real life. And you can tell because there's associations and connections, linkages between our work. So in Brandon's world, as a turnaround principal, it's the student who has the gotcha person or gotcha person and the teacher who has a gotcha person. These go together. Well, in my world of research, there's a correlation
Mm,
between a student who has a gotcha person, I call it a student with a high score on sense of belonging, and a
mm,
teacher or staff with a high score on teacher belonging. Those correlations average somewhere between like 0.74 to like 0.85. Those are strong positive correlations, which means this is where, I think some people drop the ball. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, Brandon. For those who are leading active, vibrant schools and districts, or those who are turning around schools and districts, that we focus on the students and miss the teachers and the staff, or we double down on the teachers and the staff and the curriculum and we miss the students. And the two have to be together. So as we're investing in new curricula, new resources, new laboratories, and upping the ante with our pedagogical delivery, we have to also be working on how are we celebrating our teachers, we're onboarding our newcomers, celebrating the retention of our mainstayers. And when you
yeah.
do that, that becomes a plan, right? And we're talking about strategy and culture because Brandon already kicked around, but those two have to be part of that work. Would you agree?
100%. And on a district or even, again, parallel process, what the district's doing, a school should be doing, should be happening down in the classroom. So, like, the moves don't have to look exactly the same, but the thematic idea should
Right.
be in parallel process. And that is the same on this school level. And you can think about it. If I'm implementing a new curriculum and training a teachers in it, there's a parallel process where the kids are learning that and doing the thing, right? But we start to lose, so we get that on an instructional level, but we lose that on teaming models. We lose that on the individual one-on-one relationship. We lose that in some of the sort of stuff and things that we think we're giving to kids, but we're also not doing ourselves as adults in the building.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. All right. Well, I know that we're going to have a lot to cover, and at some point, Amanda's going to ring the bell and say, I've got to stop. So, you said you want to talk to us about this school. Tell us a little bit of the school you're talking about. You said you've got some stories. So, anchor us into that school, and then I have a follow-up about some of the things that worked in turning it around.
It was an incredibly special place, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
respect its privacy in this moment. But it was a really special place. Hardworking staff, yummy kids trying to do the best they could with what they had. And I think, we'll talk a little bit about I gave you the context at entry, and I think everyone understands the complexity of a turnaround school and the sort of culture that sometimes is in repetition. And so it is really hard to build something new. And part of the journey that we went on started with that inventory of relationships. And then from that inventory came with a real strategy around how to close those relationship gaps. I didn't think we could close the opportunity gaps, the achievement gaps, if we weren't thinking about the relationship gaps in schools. Because, as any district leader, school leader will tell you, at the end of the day, I needed butts and seats. I had to really address my chronic absenteeism. At the time, it was close to 40% of my kids were chronically absent. So like, and I could easily make the connection. The kids who weren't here on my list did not have a got you or know you person. And the people who only had a know you person were often bordering on chronic absenteeism, right? Like they were starting, and I really encourage folks to do this work. Like you really do this in a serious way, you will see this connection. I don't think it was by accident. Now there's outlier situations, right? But like, I don't think it was by accident. We did that inventory and then we started to address who could fill those gaps. And that was intentional work to get to know you. And so what are we going to do to get to know this young person? And so part of what started happening in teams, where we have an instructional vision that we're going to move, but I really felt year 1 and 2, like I couldn't get to the heart of the instructional work if I didn't get to this piece of the puzzle. I couldn't move instruction if kids weren't in the building, and or if our team was just breaking up fights all day. Real talk. And so we had to really shift that thinking. And so we started really identifying teachers who were going to test the relationship, the connection. And this is also an important moment. Not everyone is your person. That is in life, that is at school. Not everyone is going to be your person. And so one teacher is not going to have every student in the school be their know you person or their got you person. They're going to be a safe adult for them. They're going to build a connection with them and be kind and show up and help strengthen skill and resilience. But they might not be the person. And so we started testing it out. You're like, okay, I'm going to take 5 on. I'm going to give it a try. Let's go see how are we going to get to know them? What's the process? I'll go to the basketball game. Am I going to join the club? Am I going to do a home visit? Like, what's the thing? And you start seeing that list start to shrink and slowly reduce. That was an important part. Then, once we started making those shifts, and then we could see, real talk, what adults couldn't do that work, weren't invested in it. And as a leader, the hard decisions, right, around like who's in our building and who do we want around our kids and who are safe adults for our kids, there were some hard decisions that had to be made then. And that's the real talk of turnaround, right? Not everyone is up for this type of labor. But then from there, we started focusing deeply on student experiences. And again, you hear me talk about this all the time, in parallel process with adult experiences. And so we started looking at young people around affinity. Does this kid have a group of kids? Are there like peers that they're interacting with? That was true particularly for our multilingual learners. 34% of the kids at the school were non-native English speakers, but across multiple languages. So it's like, do you have a peer who you feel connected with? And it's very true for our special education students. Almost half of the students at the school were special education. True, typical of turnaround schools where there are high concentrations of vulnerable kids. That's what makes it so complex to drive success. You have to be really intentional in this way. So we started thinking about that, looking at kids really deeply. In parallel process, we did the same for our staff. Do you have an affinity group here? Do you have peers in this community where you feel connected to? You're going to really show up to work different if you feel connected here. And we started building spaces for that to happen. And that could be anything. That could be the group of moms. That could be a group of dads. That could be a group of Latino people in the school who are like, oh yeah, I need to know because we're going to like be able to talk in Spanish here. That could be gay people. That could be whatever it was. Like, did you have your people? And then at the same time, we have to build integration. So like you have your people, and then also, do you feel connected to the other people here who are outside of that group? Sometimes we have our people and we don't feel connected to the other people. So how are we going to facilitate those opportunities, both being important? The opportunities for you to connect with your people and the opportunities for you to connect with people who are not like you. And then we started developing strategies to do that. I'm going to pause there because I'm talking a lot.
This is a webinar and we're here to talk. So you got to keep talking, and they are not telling you to be quiet. I'm checking the chat. No one said, hey, Brandon, shut up. No, they want you to keep talking. And I love it because listen, this last part you're talking about really shows the connection in a very practical way. That's what we're doing. Practical kinds of steps between assessment and action, right? So it's not just asking, do you have your people? Do you have affinity groups? But using that data to then, and you said it first, I'm gonna say it second, go build it, right? Create
Yeah.
the groups that they need. Which,
Yeah.
from a leader's standpoint, it's not your job to be a member of the group because it may not be your affiliation group, but you build it. So the leadership assignment, the leadership lessons are you got to assess the group, find the need, then build strategies. We're going to go there now to address those needs, create the spaces, name the group, put resources into, give them space where they can meet, designate time in the schedule so they can meet outside of work hours or when they're not supposed to be in the classroom, give them resources or budgets, even if it's small, so they can have
Yeah.
cookies and milk or whatever you're going to have at these groups. I think these are, celebrate it. Like when you talk as a leader about what's going on at the school, amplify the presence of these affinity groups that you've built so that people know, wow, this matters. And I'm sanctioned, I'm authorized to be a member of it.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, Terrell, and I'll say it again because I think it's actually the most important. It wasn't just adults looking at kids and solving kid problems. It was a recognition that more often than not, if the young folks are struggling to connect, the adults are struggling to connect. It is a rare day where I have seen a turnaround school that is not in the process of turnaround, right? Like that is at its struggling moment where the adults are super connected and the kids are disconnected from school. I would love to see that school. I think it is a very hard thing to find. And so in parallel process, and there's something exciting about this, I think, the adults were building connection and they were also creating opportunities for students to build connection. And that was a driving force and really building their own analysis of those dynamics. And so one of the things that we found, and actually back to what you just said, Terrell, where it's like, this may not be my thing. One of the things we found was this like incredible importance around athletics, particularly for our students who were not in a know you relationship or got you relationship. That like a lot of those kids, once that because we were doing these like sort of getting to know you process, people, teachers were diving in to try to see if I could be that kid's person. A lot of those young people were like deeply connected to athletics. And here's the thing about typical athletics in schools. You go to school, and then at the end of the day is your athletic program. And so most kids who really just show up for athletics, which is a lot of kids, not my thing, but like a lot of kids, they are waiting the whole day to do the thing they really want to do. That is not a motivating factor. As much as we think it is, I think adults think that's a motivating factor. That is not a motivating factor. So we just flipped it. We brought athletics into the morning. We kept it after school too. If this is that valuable in this community that we're serving, we just sandwiched the day with athletics. So guess what started happening? I started getting, and I'm saying boys because it was mostly boys in this situation. I started getting my basketball boys to come at 7 a.m. because I opened the gym an hour and a half early. And then I identified a few teachers who would be in that open gym who started building relationships with kids. All of a sudden, I'm not going to be your got you or know you person in math class because you're feeling like math is not where you succeed. It is a very vulnerable space for you to take a chance and share your knowledge because you need remediation. But on the basketball court, I got this. And now we're going to shoot and do our thing. I have no ability to give you some like smart basketball references here, but follow along. And it started to change the dynamic in those relationships. And here's the other thing as a principal, I then just got those butts in a seat. Because guess what you're not doing after you come to school at 7 a.m. all sweaty and play basketball? You're probably not leaving. And so all of a sudden, you were here for first period. And that started to change things too. And so like both things were happening. We then started to, I really like, one of the other things we noticed, because it was the Bronx, is like our kids were super into music, hip hop music, DJing. It's like the birth of hip hop. So we're not debating it. You know what I mean? Like this was a very strong piece of the culture. And so we just started creating DJing opportunities. And so it was like DJing in the morning, DJing between periods, DJing after school, just like creating these like with like some good equipment. And you'd have to have like a certain attendance rate and like show up. But then also what started happening, back to community happening and living in fellowship, is that we started seeing kids show up for the kid who was DJing. So again, another way we got butts in a seat. It was like, all right, Terrell's going to DJ Monday through Friday. And all of a sudden, I'm showing up to see the 20-minute set Terrell's got before school starts. And another opportunity to get butts in seats. Really thinking about these like high interest community things. More often than not, I will watch a school and I see like really traditional practices, really good stuff. So like with coming from a good heart space, where they're like, we're taking PBIS or our positive behavior intervention system, and it's going to look just like the other school down the street. It's going to look just like that school because there's some one size fits all model. There is not a one size fits all model, right? Like my basketball strategy is probably not going to work at the performing arts high school down the street. But at this school, a community school, most of which the kids were placed there, they weren't part of the choice system. They didn't even fill out the form. Like that's what worked here. So we started to build those moments. We did the same with student leadership. So I made a decision I was never going to run an assembly at the school. and I was never going to lead an assembly. And so we had students who would come up and do the whole thing. So it was like they were the organizers, they were making it happen, they wanted to be part of it. And it wasn't your traditional leader. It wasn't like the sort of student government president. These are like folks who were like, we want to throw a pep rally and we're going to have choose the music and we're going to do a thing. And the only rule I had is it had to be connected to some sort of cultural experience. So if we were celebrating Martin Luther King Day, it's got to be focused on Martin Luther King. If we're doing a celebration of our Regent scores as the state exams in New York, like it has to be focused on our growth in the state exams. From there, that also created another community of kids who are like, oh yeah, I want to be part of this. Again, bringing the things I was seeing really happening, like kids wanting to shine, music wanting to be shared, really bringing those interests together in this third space. So 3 examples that I want to give you of like how we started to shift those dynamics in the school.
Yeah, I love that. And, to recap in some sort of summary, I think the things that you're talking about and you close with is one, what worked at your school won't work exactly the same necessarily at another school. It might. I mean, it can be properly tried and set up. But if you're regularly assessing and monitoring impact and outcomes, which we're going to come to before we turn to the audience, by the way, audience, here's your cue. Drop some questions in the chat or use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, park some questions for Brandon and I to kick around. But as you were thinking about it, you're not saying, hey, everyone go use basketball. But what I do hear us saying is that when we're thinking about belonging and turning around school leadership, think outside the box. Meet the students where they are in their interests. So you had data showing, look, I know my student segments. I've got all this athlete stuff going on, and that informed your decision about access to the building. If you had brought me in and said, hey, I want you to come in as my belonging consultant, what I would have told you is, Principal Brandon, you're doing a great job of doing belonging work. When people feel a sense of belonging, there's a sense of possession to the experience, right? This is not your school, it's my school. It's not your assembly, it's my assembly. This is not a teacher, this is my teacher. And the way you start building those strong bonds, well, go back and watch the whole episode. Brandon's been talking about it the whole time, right? It's when you tell the students, you run the pep rally. It's when you open up the school at 7 o'clock for them to play ball. It's when you ensure that not only are they, set up for running the pep rallies, activating the school. They have affinity groups and connections. The teachers that are working with who are just monitoring, not even teaching, just monitoring them playing basketball are the ones who you have evidence do a good job of building strong bonds and relationships. Put all that together, you're starting to build culture through strategy that will lead to positive outcomes. Before we kick it over to the questions, Brandon, talk to us about the outcomes as well. Your school
Yeah.
outcomes. I know you got something else to say. Say that and then share some outcomes, then we'll switch to
That's what
questions.
that's exactly what I was going to move to. 2 things. Important to remember, it's not stagnant, and the student body this year is not the same student. You're going to have a different 9th grade class next year. Sometimes in some communities, they all start to trend the same. And that's good, but you have to be curious about that and really pay attention to it. And this other piece too is that list of the got you and know you relationships were not stagnant. That changed all the time. And so we took time, and teachers had to come forward, and adults, because we put everyone in. As I told you, I had school safety agents who were part of this work. This was not just, it's the teachers are the only ones who can have meaningful relationships with young people. This was from our cafeteria workers to the school safety agents to our bus monitors. Like this was an everyone exercise. And those relationships change, and people also had to come forward, just like your and my relationship can change for a moment, and had to come forward and be like, I'm not this kid's person right now. This happened and it is not happening. And then we start to, okay, well, actually, like, but you may not be it, but I'm having it. And I'm also a dad. So like I have to do this at home with my own child, as we all know. Like I am not the one to bear this news today. It has to be someone else. And so we have to be really strategic and honest about that. And as leaders, really look for who's unable to build those meaningful relationships with kids, and are they right for this environment? The results were real. By the time I left, real talk, we had 4 fights that entire year. There was a time we had multiple fights a day. The graduation rate became one of the highest in the districts. We had the highest performance outcomes of any unscreened school in the district. That went from being the lowest performing school in the state. So we were graduating more than the district average, 85, 90% of our students. we shifted a lot of things because we created a school where kids wanted to be there. And so I was able to get my staff, part of, high school credits, all the stuff. I was able to get my staff to a place where we voted to move our school day from 8 periods to 10 periods with a staggered start schedule for adults because I had so many kids that the only way they were going to be able to graduate was to be able to make up credits. And I would never get them credits fast enough to do it. So no matter if I gave them the traditional schedule, they were going to be in school for 5 to 6 years. And so we just made the day longer. And also, I shared with you South Bronx, poorest congressional district in the country, one of the highest homicide rates in the city. It also kept them in a really safe place. And for my adults, back to getting your needs met, I had a lot of adults who were like, I wish I could drop my kid off at school, but I am a teacher and that is not possible for me. Well, all of a sudden they're on a 10 o'clock start time. And I had some other ones who were like, I would love to be out of here at 2:30 and I want to start. And so you started to get people getting their needs met too in parallel process. We are meeting the kids' needs around a schedule and building a schedule that was also meeting adult needs.
Love. I mean, again, we write about it and you've read it in everywhere. How do you bring innovation, creativity to educational leadership in ways that will transform schools? These are the practical steps of how you do this. So we've got some questions. And the first one is when we were talking about, meeting students where they are, assessing their interest, building the affinity groups, opening the school so they can play basketball. One of our colleagues asked, how do you connect this, or do you connect this to this idea of having a sense of purpose, as we sometimes talk about it, knowing your why?
Hmm. In many ways, yes. And in some ways, honestly, no. Because there is a vulnerability that we ask. When we ask that question, it is an incredibly vulnerable question. Like if some stranger on the street was like, do you know your why? I'm in a place because of the sort of confidence I've experienced, the success I've had professionally and personally, that I'd feel comfortable sharing it. But for some folks who have not lived that life or walked in those steps, that is a very hard thing to get to. And I think, and I felt this with a lot of my students, sort of going there, they start giving you sort of generic answers. Before I could really go deep into purpose, I had to belong. And so that was and I had to see myself as successful. And I had to experience my failure not as a failure, but as an opportunity to continue growing. And so that transformation, I think, naturally moves us into our own curiosity around our why. But to get there, there was a foundation that had to be built. All in service. So I think it's a both and, Robbie. It's like all in service of that, but not as the initial starting point.
Love. And this voice you're using is giving me Brene Brown like this morning. So thank you for that. But another question we have is, can you speak more about, so when you were talking about the affinity groups and the finding your people, can you speak more about how you connect those groups, those different groups, so they don't become new ways of just separating?
Yeah, it's really important. There has to be an intentionality around finding your folks, and a skill has to be developed in being able to work and communicate and build relationships with people who are not like you. And it's really important. That work more often, I think, was happening in the classroom because when you felt like you were part of this community, and again, I think learning is the most vulnerable thing. It's why most of us like to do things we're good at. It's why I became a teacher. I was like, I will be good at this. And so, like, most of us lean into things we're good at. And we ask kids every single day to show up to spaces and be like, but today you're going to do something you don't feel good at. And so, once they started building these communities of safety, it started creating this opportunity for them to be more vulnerable in places that felt less safe and to see the entire experience as just a little bit more safe. And that the teacher started doing intentional grouping in a different way, really shifting, just like, all right, I'm not going to just put you with your peer group. I'm going to build these relationships, but you're going to feel it in a different way. We did a lot of gallery walks as a school, so it was like a constant sharing of student work. And so like you're going to get to connect with your people during the sharing, but you're going to work with people who aren't like you when you're not, right? A little bit of both.
Love it, love it, love it. As you all can see, look, we could go on for another 5 hours, but we are at time. So if you don't mind, to everyone, show some love and support. And thanks to my guests, Brandon, for joining me today. You can use your digital reactions, use the chat. We are back in the capable hands of, no, we're not yet. Listen, I know you want more. Okay, okay, we'll give it to you. And it's on Tuesday, December 2nd. Come back, join us for the fourth and final episode in this series where I'm going to be joined by my friend and colleague, Dr. Doug Fisher. We're going to be talking about belonging from literacy to learning acceleration. Again, Tuesday, December 2nd, 1 to 1:45 Pacific time. You see the adjustments for all of the other time zones. You don't want to miss this workshop that will bring this dynamic series to an end. Tell a neighbor, tell a friend, tell a district leader. But until then, remember, we've been talking about students, we've talked about staff, but to each and every one of you who joined us, you too, you matter, you're enough, and you belong here. Back in the hands of Julie. Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Terrell. Thank you, Brandon. I literally could sit and listen to you all day. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise. The good news is that all of you are registered. You can use the same link as today to join us to hear from Dr. Fisher for our fourth installation of this Belonging series. And we encourage you to invite your colleagues to join as well. All recordings will be shared with registered attendees, and attendees of this virtual series will receive a 15% off discount to apply towards our new Belonging Together Elevated Professional Development Series, which will feature individualized coaching and support from these amazing leaders and others from your district. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to harmony@nu.edu to learn more about these personalized sessions, and we'll be sending you more information coming soon. We can't wait to see you again in December, and we look forward to seeing you then. Until next time, we wish you well. Brandon and Dr. Strayhorn, thank you for your time today in this amazing conversation. And for our audience, there will be a short survey that's about to pop up. We very much appreciate your feedback so that we can continue to improve what we offer to you in the series. Again, with that, we wish you a fabulous day, a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and we look forward to seeing you in December. Thank you, everyone.